We hadn't had one of those in a minute.
It's been a minute.
I'm telling you, it's been like all sunshine and rainbow.
It has been.
Why?
It's been like, oh my
Why?
God.
I don't know.
That's the first time.
Hot buttons.
Probably
It's
a
probably
year.
like a year. I agree.
Yeah, since
And the first time in probably 2 years where all three of us was going, because usually it's like one-offs, like either me and Jarrell or Dawon Jarrell. All three of us was like, no, tap me in.
Double dutch. Come on
Right.
I know, double dutch.
Right.
For real though. For real
I know
though.
Steve was just looking at us like, ooh.
I'm just stirring the pot. I know to stir the pot. I'm good at what I do. Hello. This is Z. What up, aunties? What's brewing today?
Gay history with Zaylore Stout.
Ask Yo Aunteas Broken Bussy.
And Dave Chappelle got us fighting. So get your cups ready for Minority Report.
Hey, welcome to Minority Report. It's Auntie Kerel.
It's Auntie Dawon.
And Auntie Jarrell's back.
Hey, what's
Welcome
up,
back,
boo?
Hey, what it do?
And wait, it's the Gay Bowl champion, Auntie Jarrell.
Yes, national champion,
Ooh.
Auntie Jarrell. Okay,
We'll pump you up for like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and then we'll bring you back down. No. How was it, man?
Oh, it was a lot. Let me tell you. Like the team is based out of Seattle. We had a couple of people who are out of town that were on the team too. But everyone grown, people got lives, the pandemic this summer, everyone's ready to be out and about. So it's hard like getting people to practice. So literally every practice we had maybe like 7, at the most 8 people at a given time.
Oh,
so
wow.
we didn't even go into this like prepared. We were like, whoop, we gonna see what we gonna get. And when I tell you game 1, people were ready to fight. We were that team being like, but you ain't gonna talk to me like that.
Oh shit.
And then so I had to come in and be like, look here. Okay, so as a coach, we gonna need to do XYZ to get us together. You gonna stop doing this. You gonna do this. This is what people need to be. But like it all came together and then we started smoking bitches. I'm talking about like 41-20, 41-18, like they couldn't stand a chance. But that last day though, we were tested. We were definitely tested by the teams.
Who did you play in the championship game?
We played the San Diego Sharks.
Oh, shut up. Okay.
Yeah. And 2 of them used to play on the Boom team like 4 years ago.
Okay.
So, they had a little inside scoop, but there were a lot more new people than when they were on.
Okay.
So it was a lot of fun. It was hot as fuck. Let me tell you.
Yeah, it was Arizona.
It was like you were playing in like 97, 98 degree weather.
Nope, I'm good.
It was a lot. It was a lot, but it felt good to win. We had no idea what we were getting into. And like the league here, like our traveling team is only like 3 or 4 years old, maybe 5 years old.
Oh, okay.
So we're still a new team into the National Gay League when it comes to flag football. So
some of them leagues or some of them teams been around.
Homie was like, one dude was, I'm like, oh yeah, this is my 9th gay bowl. And I was like,
yeah.
And you ain't won nothing? Hang it up.
Ooh. Damn. Okay.
That's always gotta say something. Always gotta say
you
something.
know.
And then you wonder why they trying to fight. See?
Period.
I mean, but I stay ready to fight too. So I don't mind. I'm ready.
Hey, community, if you hear a 4th voice, we have a special guest today.
Yes.
Before we formally introduce him, let us know your auntie name this week.
Auntie Saint Germain.
Ooh, a little fancy. That's a little pinky up a little bit.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. It's a little outside the norm.
a little elderflower.
Right. But it's government.
What's in a Saint Germain?
It's the elderflower liqueur.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's in that fancy glass. They don't
Okay.
sell it in the small ones. They only sell it in the talls.
That's right. Jarrell's Auntie Henny. She like, I don't do all that.
All right. I'm taking shots straight to the back of the throat.
Oh, the dangly thing in the back.
What? You're talking about tasting alcohol. I'm trying to get to my final destination.
Honey, I know that's right. But the government name is Zaylore Stout, and you might know him as author of Our Gay History in 50 States. And it is Gay History Month right now, so we're so excited to have him on. You know, get a little round of applause, you know. Hey. Bam, 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 bam.
That's my favorite.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. This is a great way to end out the day, end out the week. There's been a lot going on.
Oof, I know that's right. Cheers to that, baby.
You're right. Clank it,
I
clank.
know.
Okay.
I need to text my partner and be like, "Can I get a drink?"
Oh, okay.
Stop by and get some Saint Germain, please.
Right? We got some.
Oh, that's right. But even this week, the week that this episode comes out, also on October 20th is Spirit Day, which for folks that don't know, that's the day where you'll see a lot of people wearing purple, which is kind of combating bullying against our LGBTQIA plus youth. So I'm excited for this episode just to kind of get a lot of the, little inside scoop of what you found in some of these 50 states of facts.
Yeah.
And, but before even that,
National Coming Out Day just passed. That was on
sure
Monday. So
Mhm.
there's so much going on this month for us.
Right?
Gay.
Gay.
Hi, gay.
Right. Go queers. But what made you want to do this book? How did this even start? Because all 50 states define facts. That's a lot of research. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of stories. Probably some dead end roads and things like that. So how did this spark in your brain as an idea?
I was actually on a road trip because I'm originally from Southern California and moved to Minnesota for law school. So I've done many road trips back and forth. And one of the road trips, the marriage equality debate was still in full swing. California, you could get married, you couldn't get married. There was a ballot initiative. Minnesota became the first state to defeat a marriage amendment. And each time I cross a different state line, I think about what relevance does the state have to LGBT history. Of course, I got to Wyoming and I thought about Matthew Shepard.
Yeah.
And I wanted to lay some flowers at the fence that he was, chained up to and left for dead. And it wasn't information that was readily available. So I was like, how is this possible? I was like, there needs to be a road trip guide, and this needs to be a spot on the road trip guide. Fast forward a bunch of years, I ended up speaking at a National Coming Out Day luncheon and met Matthew's parents. And it was the 19th anniversary of his passing.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, this heterosexual straight couple, cisgender, is doing all of this stuff, living through the worst day of their life every single day for 19 years for me and my community. So I said I needed to do more. So I met with the publisher within 2 weeks, started writing the book within 2 months, and got that book out in 2 years. So
shut up. Okay, she said.
That's awesome.
She was efficient. We are getting this done.
Girls got a day job. So my publisher said, this is a 4-year project. And I was like, I'll get it out in 2.
I know that's right. Damn. Okay, now. Shit. So what was the first state then? Did you start in Minnesota? Did you start in California? Did you kind of go, okay, let me just get the easy ones out. Let me start in New York, Stonewall, bitch,
Well, I had already been collecting information because there's certain stuff that I knew that I wanted, and certain events. So the book is broken up into people, places, and queer facts. So each state has people, places, and queer facts. So I already knew that there was information I wanted to have in there. And then I ended up hiring an army of queer youth to help me do the research. So it was really just assigning the initial research to folks to do, and then going back and looking at it through my lens of equity and inclusion and making sure it's as diverse as a community that I know that we live in, which isn't always the community that's portrayed either in the news or in the media. I know I heard that tongue pop. So,
that's why we here.
Period.
Right.
Exactly. So there were certain states that ended up being a little bit more difficult. Strangely enough, Minnesota was the state I was the most nervous about, because I was like, the book is coming from Minnesota, so they're going to be extra hard on that one. But I wasn't worried about the other states. I was like, California, we got so much stuff. I mean, it was really, I mean, the challenge for some of those larger states was really who was going to make it into the book, because the book was only scheduled to be at 250 pages, and we ended up at 408. And there's still so much information that was on the cutting room floor.
Oh, wow. You need that part 2, that duel.
I know, I was just thinking about that. Like, yeah.
You got the encyclopedia, the encyclopedia.
Right.
There you go. See, look at you working
from A to Z.
Okay. Come on now. Yes.
Come on now. You know we're gonna keep it going. Keep it going. Was there? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's been one of the like surprising things of queer history or gay history that you have come to learn in this process?
So for me, it was probably the story about Dr. Alan Hart. Thanks, babe. See, got the
he did. Oh, come on, babe. Yes.
That's a keeper.
Let me tell you. During those 2 winters I was writing this book, he was out there doing the snow removal and everything. He was like, "Go ahead." I was like, "Go ahead, babe. Just keep writing that book." So
that's a keeper.
Look, okay.
I hope you gave him a little something on the side. Be like, "I got you, boo. I got you, boo." Keep moving that snow.
Exactly. But it was probably the story about Dr. Alan Hart, who was the first trans man to undergo a hysterectomy in order to be able to do some gender reaffirming surgery. This was in the early 1900s in Oregon. And he was also a doctor, and he's the one that came up with the idea of using X-rays to identify tuberculosis in the lungs.
Oh, wow.
So one of the whole reasons we were able to get over tuberculosis was because of a trans man in Oregon in the United States in the early 1900s.
Come on now.
Right? Look at that, jaw drop.
And this is just like stuff that gets lost in history, you know? And it's just like, we need more books. We need a part 2 already. Like, I'm just because.
But here's the thing. Think about this in the time of COVID, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, and then there's all this anti-trans stuff coming up, and it's like, wait a minute, right? If we were to teach history that Blacks have made significant contributions, women have made significant contributions, Native Americans, Asian Americans, you know, Two-Spirit individuals, all this kind of stuff, right? Makes all the difference in regards to not demonizing folks and treating them as this other when they've been an integral part of our country and our survival.
That's a word. And also, like, it almost stunts the growth or at least the ambition of communities, because if you don't see it, it's hard for you to dream it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's just like, if you hear a lot of this history and these stories and the things marginalized communities and minority communities have invented and have done to progress the United States, not even just the world, like just the United States.
Right.
Like, just think how much farther we could have probably been by now in so much other stuff. And that's the sad part. And unless you unveil and uncover some of this stuff, you would just never know.
And for me, like, it's encouraging, you know, like, because we've come the representation is more visible now, and there's a different level of acceptance now. And it's like, if I only had just a little bit of the courage that a lot of people had during different times compared to where we are now, like, I just feel like part of my responsibility is to help take the baton and move it forward. Like, when you learn about our queer history and also being just queer Black people as well too, you know, like, you can't help but just like, I don't want people after me to go through this too, you know, like, so hearing these stories just kind of fills your soul with that, you know, with that word to just get out there and do what needs to be done, you know.
So you mean passing the baton better than the U.S. men's 4x100 meter
that part?
Team?
That part. Girl.
Oh,
Right.
girl. I gave double chin on that girl.
I ran
God, man.
It was boo-boo.
Lord have
I do
mercy.
feel like
Thank God the women are doing well.
Okay.
Killing it.
I mean, they are the future. We know this.
Right.
I
Sorry,
do
go
feel
ahead,
like it's definitely one of those moments where you're really contributing to the culture, right?
Yeah.
Because so many stories about our people, and I use the word "our" very inclusively, right?
Yeah.
Have been whitewashed and completely erased, and oftentimes because they don't represent the majority of people that are writing the stories, about our history, that are writing that are writing the textbooks, that are carrying on the oral traditions. They're not part of our heritage. They're not part of our community, and it takes someone who has the foresight and the fortitude to really be able to go after these kinds of untold stories. And then when you hear them, what does that spark? It goes back to that notion of you never know who you're inspiring. You never know who you're influencing. You never know who you're encouraging. You never know who you're uplifting, like all these things. And so I just think it's great that you've taken this opportunity to really invest in the culture.
Well, for me, and I'm sure this is a story for the three of you as well. I mean, I remember being younger. Now I'm probably younger than all of y'all. Well, girl, don't even start. You're
Cut her mic off. Cut her mic off. And the camera.
Right. And this interview's over. Good night. Wash your hands, wash your legs, wash your ass.
So, but I remember going to the library and like looking for some remnants of myself in these amazing archives that we have here. And having to dig extra to even find that, folks from the Harlem Renaissance were LGBT and all this kind of stuff, right? Because it just wasn't, I mean, our folks didn't talk about it, right? And none of that stuff. And so the other thing that I was like bringing up too is, this is, interestingly enough, this is an area where, as we being members of the Black community, actually had some privilege compared to folks from the LGBT community, because even though Black history was not taught in schools besides slavery and a little bit of the civil rights movement, we were able to learn about our history and our culture at home, right? With our family and our community and our aunties, right? But most queer people aren't raised in queer homes. So then where is it that they learn about that element and that aspect of their history? And more often than not, we don't. That's why we have adults that don't know anything about LGBT history. So there was a lot of work there in regards to being able to provide this opportunity. My goal is, if somebody comes out, like, I want somebody to think of this book and be like, this is what I need to give them.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's a
Christmas
kid,
coming up, y'all. Holidays.
Okay.
Put that on the list.
But I mean, think about how easy it is then to open up the pages and go to your home state, to go to any state that you've lived in, to go to a place where you want to go and visit and see all this history that's there. If you had that when you were younger, right? How would that have impacted you? So I guess those are questions for the three of you. If you had a book like this, you were able to open it up and see Black and brown folks, from the start of our country, from folks that are LGBT fighting in the Revolutionary War, very beginning, all the way up to now. How would that have changed your life, or would it have, or made it any different?
I mean, I think it would have personally, because I feel like there are some states that I deliberately avoid now because of like the amount of racism and homophobic, and sexism that you see, especially in a lot of the southern states and some of those like flyover states as well, So I avoid those, and I really only go there or have any desire to go there for historical purposes. So this gives me a little bit more reason to even want to go there even more,
Yeah, like I was almost thinking of, and it's something actually I was thinking of recently. You were just saying kind of like not a lot of us have been raised in queer homes. And for me, it'd almost be because like, luckily, like my parents are from the South. So there's just like a lot of civil rights pride and things like that I've heard about. But it's taken me later in life to have the proud foundation within my queerness. And so just to see that at a younger age and to hear that at a younger age would have given me a lot longer time of just being proud of being queer and knowing those stories and being able to tell those stories and be like, oh no, oh boy, did this, and oh girl did this, and nope, non-binary's been here since the beginning of time. Just don't get it twisted, just little tidbits that I've been able to spew out for being Black. And those have just been like the repetition of it just been like ingrained in me from day one. But the queerness part of it has literally been almost like the last decade of my life. And then even until this podcast, having other folks on, hearing their situations and be like, I'm proud of that other podcast. I'm proud of these folks and hearing their stories, because it was just something I didn't have growing up a lot. And then even going into my adult life, not knowing, and even hearing this story now, I'm like, shit, there's just so much that I don't know. Absolutely. That I need to do better at just educating myself, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, also feel though, like the standard or like the gold standard or whatever, and what's being presented in the queer community isn't diversity.
Our shade.
That's not, it's or any shade outside of pale. I go to the tanning bed. I need some vitamin D, not just regular D. So so like,
that's true.
So it's like when you're coming out, it's not like as if you're even really pushed to want to learn those things. It's like the straws you are grasping at, to find your queer identity when you first come into yourself, don't reflect those of us who are people of color or, don't fit that square box of what's pushed as queer right now, which is white and queer or white and gay predominantly. Whenever you see a pride or any type of thing, the poster is a white guy. You're not seeing trans representations on a lot of those posters. You're not seeing people of color. You're not seeing lesbians. Like you're not seeing the full spectrum of the queer community. So when it comes to come out, the things that you see don't often reflect you. So that's why like a lot of us kind of tend to find ourselves later in our queerness, because we had to weed out the dumbness. Like, nope, that ain't me. Nope, that ain't me. Nope, that ain't me. That ain't mine. That's not
me. They've almost whittled down the people of color within the queer community almost to like a Malcolm X and MLK in the Black community. The Marsha P. Johnsons and Sylvia's. No, there's so many more people and so many more instances and so much more history that we just don't know, or it's just hard to get to. Due to, everything's been whitewashed. So it's just like having a book like yours and just kind of just simply going through it and just be like, damn, okay, let me go to this random town and visit this house. Let me go to wherever it may be, and add that to my bucket list of just vacay plans instead of just, always going to PV and stuff like that, which I do adore.
I know. I listened to the last
but
one.
There's other places.
I do think that there's also like another layer. Like I completely agree with all of you about, the importance of representation. I also think about the so many references of negative stereotypes of our people. And if I think about me growing up, I didn't have positive representation of queer people, period. You would have representation of queer people, but it was always a joke, something to be made fun of, or even in your own family, talking about, oh, well, he got a little sugar in his tank, like these little like microaggressions and overt, aggressions that happen for people who are, I'll just say from my experience as a young Black gay man, who, was trying to understand and reconcile his own masculinity, femininity, and all of the stuff that intersects, right? And all of the representation that I saw of gay culture, was negative. And so there was nothing really aspirational about it. It was like, okay, well, I can't help these feelings, that I have, I can't help these urges. And I'm battling all of these, like I'm watching TV and something kind of quasi-gay comes on and I have to like avert my eyes or whatever, all of that stuff. And I think stories like this, if getting back to your question of like, what would have it done?
Yeah.
What would I can't
close enough.
We got you. Right, we got you.
Right. The impact it would have had.
There you go.
Bravo.
She did it.
She had to wordsmith that. The impact that it would have had would have been tremendous, because there's nothing like having a positive representation of something that you then also identify with, right? It's not just to have representation. You can have representation, and that representation be another negative example, and
Absolutely.
or it can be an example that's still trying, but it's not there, and so there are behaviors that are really not congruent with what is aspirational, and then you aspire to what you see, and so you emulate those kinds of behaviors because you think that's the way to go. So I think that it would be really impactful
and
for anyone to have this as part of it.
And there's something too in just a normalcy of things. Like, we always want this extraordinary moment. There's something in the normal day-to-day that is nice, just to see someone at the grocery store that might be gay, that, those moments instead of, I like the x-ray with tuberculosis, like, damn, that's an extraordinary moment. But what about, like, I just went to the grocery store and survived.
Holding hands.
Right. Just a normal day-to-day.
I remember being in Columbus, Ohio, and because I grew up in Cleveland, and I remember being in Columbus, Ohio, and I remember the first time I saw two gay men holding hands, and like my whole spirit lit on fire in the most positive ways. And that's not an act of well, it could be considered act of heroism, but it is it's an everyday thing, that just means so much.
So two things I want to make sure that I highlight, because this is all great, because it ties into in regards to what it was that I was thinking about when I was writing this book as well. Is I didn't want to just highlight the usual suspects. There are usual suspects you're not going to see in this book. Why? Because the story's already been told, right? It's not about telling everybody's story that's already been told. So I've already been reached out to some people. Why am I not in the book? Because your story's already been told.
Because they already know your ass.
But the thing is
damn, thirst.
But
you got to be on Time Magazine and in my book. Come on now.
But I mean, I wanted usual suspects in there too. You know what I mean? Like people, like everyday folks that would just live in their regular life, and like the first gay couple to go to a prom. How significant is prom to the American lifestyle, and it's this rite of passage, and how many generations never got to go to prom? And so the first gay couple to go to prom was in the 70s, and the principal was like, if people have a problem with it, they need to get over it. Gay people are here in the 70s, right? And so it's that kind of stuff. But then I also wanted to make sure that I was thinking about and make sure that I represented all those folks that normally aren't included at the table in regards to any of these books. So we hear about trans women, we don't hear about trans men. So I made an extra effort to make sure that there was trans male representation. Our Asian and Pacific Islander siblings, rarely included in regards to stuff. Intersex, there's so many folks that are members of our community that don't know what the I and the A mean, intersex and asexual. I made sure that representation was there. The Two-Spirit community, right? Our Native siblings that have been here well before us, right? So it was making a concerted effort to make sure that all that representation was there. What my goal is anybody that picks up this book will be able to find somebody in here that they can personally identify with. People with disabilities, all of it, right? Immigrants. I mean, that was my goal. I'm sure I missed stuff, so I'm waiting for people to give me that feedback so I can give the book the update.
Where the people with the green eyes at?
They in there.
Only got one nostril.
The one blue eye, the one brown eye. But no, it's true. You just want to feel seen, and you want to know where you came from and the struggles of the history, so you don't make those same repeated mistakes going forward as well.
I just hope everyone that know me that normally get a Christmas gift from me, just know, which you already know, listening to what you're getting for Christmas.
Right.
There you go.
Real talk. Because I feel like a lot of these things aren't being pushed within our community. And unless you enlighten people, unless you choose to have these conversations with a lot of people, people aren't looking for this type of knowledge. And I feel like there's no better way, honestly, to make sure as a community, because it's not just about people who aren't part of the queer community knowing. It's like people in our own community need to know this. And it really does start internally. And everybody getting this fucking book. I feel like Oprah, you get a book, you get a book, you get a book. Like, because I mean, God, it's just, I just can't even. I'm just gonna drink my wine. I just can't even.
What was the biggest thing you learned about yourself? I mean, I can only imagine going through so many pieces of data and stories and case studies and etc. And vetting all of this, and just the process of writing a book and getting it published and getting it out and marketing it and all of that. That's a whole other job. So I'm curious, as you sit back and reflect on, this accomplishment, what did you learn about yourself through this?
What I learned is don't always listen to those naysayers. You always hear, I remember, hearing, I can still hear the voices in my head, like, oh, you're not a good writer, from folks way back, important folks in your life, right? Saying that that's probably not the path that you want to go. And yet, I go to law school, I become an attorney, and a lot of part of being an attorney
that's all you do.
Is exactly, right? And then, I mean, I had never thought I'd write a book, let alone a history book. And, and so it's just believing in yourself. And when you find your meaning or a purpose, follow it through. And, this was just an idea that came with me being on a random road trip, right? It was an idea a long time ago. That seed was planted, but it wasn't until I met Dennis and Judy Shepard, who really have welcomed me into their family. I was just at the foundation gala this last weekend, and nobody had told Judy that I was coming, and she runs up to me, she's like, "Why did they tell me you were coming?" She was all mad, And then after the event, she brought me over and introduced me to the rest of the family. I had never met Matthew's brother, even though I had heard all about him. And I mean, it's just like, I feel like I'm part of the family, which is kind of crazy. I'm like, I'm just this guy that wrote this book. I'm from Minnesota, but it's all because we're all together in regards to trying to make this a better place and doing our part. And we all have a different part to be able to play in that, right? I have a part in regards to being an attorney and being an advocate and being, bringing the Black and brown perspective to the table. They have a different part by being parents, right? And being white and being cis and having different conversations that they can have with folks that I can't have, right? I walk in the door, there's people that are going to just shut down and be like, oh, there's nothing he can say that can change me. But there's different people that can walk into the room and have a different impact. And so it was really, just believing in your truth and following your mission. And for me, this was an important place that I was supposed to be. And my next book, Our Black History in 50 States.
Okay, hey, you better tease that. I know that's right.
Come on, Blueprint.
I know that's right.
I already started writing it. So,
and I know I got some Black history in a couple states myself.
Uh-oh.
I'm just saying.
Let me drink to that one.
I do have to say though, I just wanted to say, like, because Z, you and I, we go back. We go back. And it's been nice just knowing you outside of the book and seeing you like have this dream and then bringing it to fruition, and then just you just being a voice, like just as a friend and someone who know you, like I've seen the change in you, and I just want to thank you, because I really feel like you are someone that's doing the work of the community. And I kid you not, I didn't even know that October was Queer History Month until like it was literally like that last Wednesday before the episode came out, and they're like, oh, and I was like, literally, you were the first person. I was like, I know exactly who needs to be on the podcast. I'm about to reach out to her right now, like no one else, because I honestly feel like you are one of those people who the community needs to be aware of. And I think that you're a light in the community, and I think you deserve all your flowers. And I hope people are paying attention to what you bring to the table and who you are, like real talk. So
thank you.
I like that. I like that.
She doesn't give out compliments often, so I'm gonna take it.
I'm a shady bitch.
You better grab it. I know we have our own queer Black history right here. Like, honestly, like you're part of that. And so that's dope. I like that. Well, where can they find this book, by the way? Where, like, plug your social, is it Amazon? Is it Barnes & Noble? Like, where can they get this stuff?
Okay, so real talk. If you ever want to support an author, always ask where you want them to buy the book.
Where do you want them to buy it?
So the interesting thing is Amazon requires roughly a 60% discount on books. That's why they can sell them for so cheap. Whereas if you buy the book directly from us, which is at gay50states.com, gay50states, 10% of the book's proceeds go to LGBT nonprofits.
Hey,
so do you want Jeff Bezos to have the money to be able to send some more folks up into their little, into space?
And the penis rocket?
Or, correct. Or do you want to support your LGBT nonprofit?
You better say that.
And I know that's right.
So our socials are all the same. It's gay50states, gay50states. So that's the same thing on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. So we got the consistency across the board there. So yeah.
Awesome. Yep. That's where I'm buying mine.
Facts.
I'm like Jarrell. Like that's what y'all get for Christmas. You heard it.
Look, as we were talking, I was like, all right, I know this white person that needs it. I know this white person that need it. I was like, I know my auntie needs this book. I said my cousin over here needs this book because I was just on her Instagram story. Like
and her nosy neighbor needed it. Okay, look, carrying down the street. Absolutely.
The interesting thing that the story that I keep hearing is that people have this on their coffee table. Because it is a coffee table book. It's it's thick, it's heavy, it's 5 pounds. But it's won awards, even the best coffee table book in the Midwest.
Okay, now.
Come
on. Yeah. All right. You gotta talk that shit.
I know that's right.
The book's been approved for the use as a textbook for teaching LGBT history in the state of Illinois.
That was going to be my question. How do we get this into the school systems?
Yep. So currently, I think there's 6 states that currently require the teaching of LGBT history in schools: California, New Jersey, Illinois, Colorado, Oregon, and then there's one more. Oh, Nevada, I think just came on this year. But when people get their hands on this book, they'll see it on the coffee table. They're like, "What's this book about?" People will spend an hour on in this book.
Yeah,
so they went to this house for some other reason, but they just can't put it down.
Good. Love it. So where's it at again? Give that website one more time.
gay50states.com.
I know that's right. And on that note,
I should have brought mine over here too because I was part of the Kickstarter and I got mine from the Kickstarter. And I'm like, damn,
you were first up in there.
Girl, I'm an OG girl. Let me tell you, I was sharing it back then. Let me tell you.
There she is.
There we go.
Hey.
Yes, I know that's right. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick little tea break.
Ooh, tea.
We interrupt this episode for very important information.
That's right. You've been asking for it for a long time, and we have heard you.
Yep, it's been a long time coming, but it's finally here.
Yo Aunteas
got
merch! Hey! That's right. You know what? We got tees, we got long tees, we got sweatshirts, we got fanny packs, there's just a whole gamut of stuff out there, so go and check that out.
We are so appreciative of your love and support, and we are so excited to launch it. Girl, where can we find it at?
Ma'am, they can head right over to minorityareport.com to check out the selection.
That's right. That's MINORITEA report.com.
Woo! All righty. Well, we're going to have Z on the rest of the episode. So what time is it? Ask Your Aunteas. Hey, a little one shoulder shimmy. Let's see here. You want to do it, Jarrell?
Yes, I can do. And let me find out where this chat is. Oh, there it is. So it says, so I was catching up on some of the videos and I watched the Ask Your Aunteas begging for a BJ. And one of the things mentioned early on is how before you commit to a relationship, you make sure you both are sexually compatible. But here's the thing. I have heard of many people that are in good relationships, me included, that their sexual drive and their partners are totally different. And if that's the case, that's something known before becoming a couple. So I guess the question is, How much sex affects the decision to become a couple? And yes, sex is 100% necessary. And if we just get comfortable with the person too much, that someone in the relationship has to sacrifice something. And just to clarify, yes, I know we need communication and all that. But why and how knowingly do we accept a relationship where we know sex stuff or desire levels, etc., is different? So, in long story short, compatibility in a relationship, especially whether it's sexually, specifically sexually, how important is it when you're getting in a relationship, even when you have good communication?
Yeah. We'll let Z kick that off.
Oh, really? Me?
Yeah, you're the special guest.
I mean, didn't your partner just bring you something to drink?
I know, he just bought you a drink, so you know.
Dude, that's foreplay right there.
Those are the post credits, okay?
Let me cater to you.
I know that's right. Anything you want, baby. Ooh, you blow me away. Come on, B. Right.
Hey, I've been in my share of relationships where I used to think that focusing on sex and making sex an important part of a relationship was something that was really shallow. So I had been in my share of relationships where I overlooked the sexual incompatibility. And then at the end of the day, it of course that ended up being something that came back, right? And that it wasn't necessarily something that was fair for the other person that was involved, and all of that kind of stuff. So, but you be an adult and you make those decisions, and sometimes you have to, end those relationships with folks that you really truly love, but you're just the compatibility from a sexual perspective isn't there. You got to move on from that perspective. But I don't necessarily think that that it's an end all be all, right? Because love changes people's minds and hearts and things that people want to be engaged in and involved in, and sometimes people didn't have exposure to certain things as opposed to other things, and they didn't necessarily know that they would like certain things when they ultimately end up liking it. So that, I mean, it's I think it's a moving target in regards to that. And so I know some gay married couples where they got married there both times.
Yeah,
it's working out somehow. Right?
Who? Let me stop.
It's working out. It's working out somehow. So that's my 2 cents. But I'd love to hear what the three of you have to say.
Yeah, I agree. It is definitely a moving target, and I think sometimes even say you're in a relationship for a while, there's ebbs and flows, highs and lows, weeks and days and months that is like, oh damn, we jackrabbits, and then other times you like life gets in the way sometimes, and I think over time too, as age fluctuates, like because especially in my relationship, there's like an age difference, and so as he's getting older, it might not be quite as important as it once was. And for me, I'm like, okay, come on now, boo. But it's not the only thing in our relationship, and it's not the only thing that we're trying to grow and succeed in. So I think if you're in a relationship that you care about them, there's just more than just sex. It's important. It's definitely important. And I think it's one thing is that sometimes you don't know getting into a long-term relationship that there's going to be some of these ebbs and flows and spells potentially. But as you said, communication is key. If you're feeling like you're not getting your needs, speak up, and we got to figure something out. And I think there's options. I think, again, sometimes we just get so focused on monogamy and things like that. And if it works for you, it works for you. But there's options to be like, hey, maybe we were monogamous, but hey, my needs have changed, your needs have changed, whatever it may be. Let's have that conversation and see what can potentially be done instead of having to build up a resentment and things like that. We're just not getting that need met sexually. But yeah, I mean, going into it, if you already know that you're not as compatible, and that's not an end all be all, or that's like maybe a deal breaker for you, don't bring that shit up a decade later.
Right. What about the sexual? But what about the sexual drive? Because I think that's one of the things that this person is hitting on when they say in a good relationship that their sexual drive and their partners are totally different, though. You know, I don't think it's never about what you're into. I think it's about more. When I hear sexual drive, I think frequency.
Yeah. And
you
like
know,
libido
I think
and
how,
things like that.
yeah, like how often, you know, I do definitely think that plays a big role in it. You know, some people need it on a regular basis, you know, and that is okay, you know, but there are also some who like, you know, I'm good for a couple weeks, you know, or I don't need it that often. And I do think that type of difference can make or break a relationship, you know, because it's at the end of the day, if you have the higher sex drive that and your partner doesn't, that means you're not getting something out of your relationship, which can make straying out of your relationship that much more easier to do, you know. But I think that's at the end of the day, that's not a well, my partner's not doing thing. That's a you thing.
Right.
Like if you know that your sexual drive is more than your partner's, then you have to be like, hey, I need this. And if you can't give me this, then I can't do this. Because it's not their fault that you end up like cheating in that situation. Because, you know, some people be like, well, I cheated because I wasn't getting this. Well,
you could be grown.
Right. Maybe you asking for too much. Bitch, maybe you asking for too much. You know, maybe you a hoe and you need to sit the fuck down. You know, like, you know,
sit down on something.
You know, you're right. They sit down on something. But, you know, like, I think that is very, like, that. I think in this question, that's kind of the root of it. But at the same time, I completely agree with you all. Like, but when it comes to sexual compatibility, and I feel like that's the stuff that you're into, you know, the things that arouse both you and your partner, you know, in those moments, that's also very important too, you know. So I honestly feel like both of those have to be present, and both of those have to be something that's communicated. And I've said on the podcast before, like Fizz and I, like, we didn't have sex the first 4 months of our relationship because that's not what we wanted our relationship to be based on. We wanted to be more than just a physical connection, because in those hard moments, the physical connection ain't saving us. You know, you know, it's all the other things that we invested in our relationship that's going to get us to that longevity, that long-term relationship that we both envision. And then we start having those conversations, and it kind of lucked out. But I will say though, I still feel like it was something that we probably could have talked about more, you know, in those times, you know, in those first 4 months. But we're in a place now where like we are on the same page, and it works great for the two of us.
Yeah,
you know. But it may not be the case for everybody. So at the end of the day, just like you have those conversations about like what movies you like and what music you like and stuff like that, talk about how much you like your back blown out and how much you like sucking dick, you know, or if you don't like sucking dick, you know, if you need your hole punched or something, like you talk about that like right away. Don't mean you need to do it. I'm not saying you need to go out there and do all these things,
but let it be known. Let it be normal. It should be a normal ass conversation.
Right. Set the table. Know what the full 7-course meal is. You know, I'm just saying.
I do feel like the thing that we're not talking about is kind of the latter part of the question, because I agree with what you all are saying. But the latter part of the question is, why do people get into these relationships knowing that the levels are different? And so I think what we're not talking about is that it's a very real thing that a lot of people, not just gay men, shrink.
Because that
was a YouTube moment. In my mind, I was answering the questions. I was in real time. I'm like,
I'm getting into my Iyanla mode, and she over here.
She just get lay it on me.
She didn't got a grand championship, and now she just cutting everything up. but I think in all truthfulness, in a real moment of honesty and having a real conversation, right? And it's not to say that those other things aren't valid and aren't equally important, but on the emotional side of it, I believe that a lot of us end up shrinking ourselves. We shrink ourselves for the sake of the relationship. And oftentimes it's because what we want, we value more than what we need. So we want the relationship. We want to be with that guy. We want to be with that girl more so than we're valuing what we need out of the relationship. So it becomes, so we end up shrinking those parts of ourselves. So then you do have people who, I love this person so much, I want to be with them so much that I end up not emphasizing the things that could potentially break us up. Right. And that ends up resulting in other problems that happen in the relationship, like people stepping out, whether emotionally or physically, and all these things. So the notion, right, of why people or how people knowingly go into these relationships, knowing that there is a difference, is because they want to. They want to more. And I'm not being shady, but they want to. More so than they're recognizing their own needs and what they value. Sometimes in that, because we've all been there. I know I've been in that situation more times than I care to admit. Sometimes we just don't know what we need. And that relationship helps uncover things like, I didn't realize that our sexual incompatibility was going to be an issue for me. I didn't realize that my sexual appetite is growing or decreasing than when we first got together. You know, so like who you are in the midst of the relationship can be a vastly different person than who you were when you were courting this individual, contemplating going into a relationship with them. So I think honestly, this notion of how much of ourselves are we sacrificing because we want more than we're willing to pursue what we need, that is a real conversation. I think is it blurs all of the lines of sexual expression and identity. That's a human basic need with every relationship.
So then how do you know what you need without going for what you want?
You have to, well, that's what you have to do. You have to experiment. You have to experiment. You have to, but I think the notion of it, I think when you're figuring out who you are, you know, going back to, you know, Z and the book, right? And talking about how a lot of us don't have the gay history, that I'm using gay very broadly, the LGBTQIA history, the cultural history of our peoples, right? And like many of us who have come of age in their queerness, collectively, you know, as a term, come of age in terms of who they are much later in life, right? There is so much of our lives that are hidden, uncovered, that we're ashamed of, that we don't explore, that we don't navigate until we're in the midst of a relationship, until we're in the midst of whatever situation it is that we're in, that you figure it out at the expense of, you know, potentially these relationships. Also, you got to experiment, because there are going to be things that, how do you know that you don't, that you're a sex positive person, or that you're much more conservative, until you start pushing the boundaries for yourself and exploring that and figuring out, I don't really like this, or I kind of like this, or I didn't know that I would like that.
Exactly.
You don't know until you don't know. But I think at the end of the day, it boils down to the communication. And I think if there is healthy communication between, and I know this, you know, this writer said, you know, that I know there's communication, but I think it's about talking about the right kinds of things.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just
and being open to that communication,
because I think sometimes the fear is that you either might hurt your partner's feelings when you bring this up, or get your feelings hurt when they bring it up. And that's a part that, like, especially if someone that you care for, that you are building a life with and things like that, you almost still, no matter how long or short you're in a relationship, got to somehow put these separately, the emotion of it, and just a matter of fact is that they felt comfortable to come to you. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We don't want them stepping out. We want you want your partner, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, to come to you with these situations and figuring out a game plan. And that's it.
Absolutely. There's two things that came to mind. One thing was piggybacking in regards to what Jerrell said in regards to his relationship. He was saying that, there probably could have been better communication early on in regard to the sexual compatibility, frequency aspect and everything, right? And that reminds me that, sex ed is not something that happens here in the United States. So there's never a discussion regarding normalizing it. It's always this weird, awkward thing where parents don't do it. You don't talk about it at school. Whereas in other countries, right, like in Europe, like everybody learns about sex ed. It's not a big deal. And so it's more normalized in regards to being able to have these types of very open and honest discussions in the very beginning, when you're still courting each other, as opposed to years later after you've been in the relationship and then you find out, oh, I really like this.
I like getting fisted.
I can't. I mean, but that's true, because for me, like with my parents, like if I ever heard like the Velvet Rope, that's when I knew. Like, I was like, oh, I heard that song. I'm gonna stay upstairs. We ain't going nowhere near them.
That was the song.
The album.
And that's a long ass album too.
What you doing with your hands that you can't pick up the phone?
He heard that first interlude that come on that album.
Honestly, I still can't listen to that album without, like, it's just that album is just
it's a trailer.
Right. That album is over there.
Because that Velvet Rope's at the beginning of that album too. So
I know. I knew. I just
It didn't take you long to figure that out.
But that was our sex ed. Like like you kind of, you talk about it, but you don't talk about it. Like you just you pick up on some of those things. Yeah. But like, I mean, I was fortunate enough that like, my partner has the communication skills where we can talk about those things, and we can talk about, hey, his needs versus my needs, how we meet in the middle, and then also just the idea of just part of being a relationship is also just, doing for your partner, like sometimes it's not all about, you necessarily having to like the same thing sexually. Right. Sometimes it's just being comfortable to do for your partner what their needs are. Doesn't mean that you have to, feel some sort of way about it too, but that comfort level alone can go a long way to make sure that both parties are getting what they need out of it.
Period.
I think this is one of the reasons we have this podcast. We can go from talking about bouncing on dicks to emotional intelligence, right?
Bam, right?
But I do feel like the thing that's difficult for a lot of people when it comes to like communication is really getting in touch with their emotions. What is it that you're feeling? Why are you feeling it? And being able to articulate it in a way that the other person can receive it. Yeah. And, that's really difficult for some people to do. So it's, in my opinion, that's why I was stuck on like that last piece, like the how and the why people do it. Because there is a level of maturity. And I'm not trying to say this to shade anybody. I'm just saying there is a level of maturity that you gain over time that allows you to advocate for what the
not fuck only you want
and need. But also what you need. There is a level of maturity that comes along with that. So like Jarrell, when you were saying, well, how do you know if you don't try? Well, yeah, you're going to have to try. You're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs, which we have. You're going to have to fuck a lot of ducks.
A lot of ugly frogs. There's a lot of ugly dangalangs out there.
But the hope, and what I hope for people as they get out of this, and this is something that I put into practice as well, is that every single encounter, every relationship that you have, whether it's sexual, friendship, professional, whatever, and that relationship, whether it's a relationship that you have today, or it is a relationship that has ended or is ending, there's something that you're supposed to be learning from that.
Yes,
there is something that you're supposed to be learning from that. So if it's a romantic relationship, sexual relationship, and you find yourself always dating the same kind of person, right? There's something you're supposed to be learning out of that that you are not learning. So, I would encourage all people to think about, really be reflective about the relationships that you have, and really think about, well, what is it that I'm supposed to learn from it? How did I show up? How did I communicate? How should I have shown up? What did I do? What didn't I do? What could I have done differently? What do I need to do differently moving into the next phase of whatever's going to be before me? And quite frankly, training yourself to be comfortable, training yourself to know that if somebody says no to you, that means it's not right for you.
Right. And I hope people find courage literally in that statement of knowing that, like, just because it didn't work between you and the other person doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, you know, like
it's not yucking your yum.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's just more so about finding what's right for you, and just knowing
and
that
for the people too saying no, that it's okay to say no as well.
That part, you know, like, I mean, like, at the end of the day, it really is about just finding out the best version of yourself. You know, and you really don't know what you don't know. So don't be mad or don't be scared of going into something because you don't know something. You know, like, part of growing and getting older is about learning. You know, there's a reason why, you know, when we get to certain people's ages, you know, when we talk about, you know,
don't be looking over there.
I look at the flying
look over there.
over
She's
here.
so shady. I remember that. Look over there.
I looked at the flying plane over here, and, you know,
Marry a wrinkle.
Okay, Jada.
Jada
Essence Hall.
No turkey necks over here.
But, you know, like, that's where they talk
no
about
waddle
wisdom.
arms. Come on now.
But that's where, you know, where they talk about wisdom, you know, like, that's, you know, that's how you get there. You know, that's how you feel comfortable in who you are, and you find yourself being more grounded by going through those life lessons. So, you know, explore, bitch, figure it out, and don't.
And if you're already in a relationship, though, bring it up. At least have the courage to bring it up, to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, so that way, if it don't work, you can get out and you can go experiment,
and
spread
have
like
some
butter.
Fun. And this question came from. Show don't.
I'll say that again. Closed mouths don't get fed.
More ways than one. And this question came from episode 133, which was rumors Lizzo versus Lindsay, Ask Yo Aunteas begging for a BJ. So that's where it came from, in Afghanistan and Haiti. So this was what? Wow. That episode just seemed like yesterday. This is already damn near 10 episodes ago.
Yeah, girl.
Oh, really?
But yeah, so if you wanted to go back and listen to that initial Ask Yo Aunteas, where this question came from, it is episode 133, came out on August 23rd, so 2021, just in case you're hearing this in the future.
Right.
But continue.
I love questions like this. I really
that's a good one.
And
I think that I feel like this person said we could say their name, so I want to give them credit. Miguel, thank you, Miguel. Right, thanks, boo. But continue to send your questions at aya@minorityareport.com or DM us. We like these questions. That's a very good one to follow up, especially it shows that you're listening to the episodes. Thanks, boo.
Well, of course, Miguel's part of the community.
Absolutely.
So, you know.
Absolutely. But quick. Did y'all see how Superman's son came out as bisexual in the comic books? And then did you see on...
That's my grandson, apparently, because, you know, I was named after Jor-El, who is Superman's father's name.
Okay.
So it's in the family. It makes sense.
It makes sense, right? It's in the DNA, honey.
It's in the DNA, honey. Okay.
But it was just interesting. So, like, it's kind of ruffled some feathers, to say the least. So on IG, I just happened to be scrolling, and how I even found out about it was from Tyrese's IG. He had posted, and it looks,
you know what?
It is so random.
A whole bunch of things that are
that
so
part. That part. And here's the crazy thing: he took it down. I'm just looking up there because I was going to read the caption. Hold on, I got receipts. You
gotta keep them receipts.
I'm keep scrolling, but for sake of time, he had put it up there, and the caption was just like, "Should kids be exposed to the sexualness of this comic?" And like literally
This
celebrities were like chiming in and everything.
Boosie statement.
Right. It's like this shit ain't got shit to do with you. Hey, it's a comic
or
book.
the kids for that matter.
Right, exactly.
I mean, PBS got gay parents. PBS got fucking shows where like the kids like got two gay parents.
They kiss in every Disney movie. Like good. But he said when I found it, he said, when I was a kid, I never ever seen images like this on TV. Lies. Someone said the days of kids being just kids and being exposed to, and he put in quotes, adult choices are long gone. Would you agree?
Adult choices. He was really he put his foot in that one.
He tried it. And then he had the nerve to pin Wanye Morris, Mr. Close It Down, Boys and Men. He said, fuck, our childhood has been hijacked. Nothing against the choices of human beings, but that was never a thought process for me as exactly. This choice word was throwing me for a loop. Was never a thought process for me as a child loving comic books. It was either Superman and Wonder Woman or Superman and Lois Lane. And I agree with some other person that said something. Why can't they just be cartoons or comics about heroes?
But at the end of the day, like, can we talk about the fact that your childhood was 30 motherfucking years ago, bitch. And things have evolved and grown since then. So why are you trying to compare your childhood, which was decades ago, to today, bitch? You're a grown-ass man. You need to stay out of children's life. Stop. You're doing the most, okay? At the end of the day, you should be happy that there has been growth from when you were a kid. And Tyrese, you ain't young, so bitch, you were born in the late 70s. Bitch.
Here's the thing. This shit was around in the 70s.
Yes.
The only thing is, we've said it a couple times on here, it was just CBS, NBC, PBS, and ABC, and it was held by white men. So they dictated what was out there. So what you got fed at that age as a kid was a facade because they weren't comfortable with the gay community. This shit was always out there, boo-boo.
Yeah, you act like it didn't exist.
How many times? Listen, okay, first
go.
The fuck of all. Have you ever seen Good Times? Have you ever seen James and Florida kiss each other, smack each other on the ass, go into the bedroom to get it in? Come on now, don't act brand new like we have not seen straight couples kissing and doing all kinds of things
and making adult choices
and making adult choices our entire lives. So the reality of it is that you're seeing gay people exercise that same privilege, and now you mad. But the question is, why are you mad?
Okay, look. Have you seen any comic books where they have big oversized clothes on, or they're always the tightest, most form-fitting, showing off all your titties, your booty, your bulge, right? And every comic they try to mac on the girl or whatever, or they're doing this or they're doing that. So don't start about over sexualizing.
Oh,
right?
facts.
You can pick up any comic book, comic book. Right? And there's pecs showing and this and that, and don't even start.
They embrace for a reason. They embrace for a reason. There's a pose there for a reason. You got a 6-pack and titties all up in your face for a reason. Like,
Spider-Man been doing splits and showing his booty hole for the past 85 years. Come on now.
For Lois Lane, dipping it low for Lois Lane. But here's the thing.
See, but even Superman with Lois Lane. That is a romantic relationship.
Exactly.
Did he kiss Lois Lane in the comic book?
Absolutely.
How was that not seen as being something?
And why is every Disney? I mean, you had Sleeping Beauty. She got awakened by a kiss. You had Little Mermaid, where you had a whole fucking 4-minute song saying "Kiss the girl."
But you're right.
No consent.
No consent.
You had a whole Little Mermaid song talking about "Kiss the girl," la 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 la. Like, I mean, a whole 4-minute ass song. Then for Tyrese and Wanye, who have the crooners are crooners, sweet lady, and till the water runs dry, and I'll make love to you. All these songs that I probably shouldn't have been listening to when I was growing up. And you got an issue about quote unquote adult choices, and I'm putting that for every human being and non-binary and everything, because it's not just the LGBTQIA plus community.
Right.
Because it's not like
adult choices.
Here's the thing. to go through the struggles that a lot of folks go through within the LGBTQIA plus community, it would not be a choice. We would not choose this. Okay.
Nobody would choose that.
So get that out your mouth now. So that's the part that was like really, and so I was in there like and going in with random ass people. Then I was like, okay, Kerel, you got your point across. Put it down.
You sound like me. I love it. I love it.
But she took it down.
She
took it down. I wonder why she took it down.
You know why? Because she was looking for
you better.
This crazy.
Tyrese always got something to say.
Don't cry somewhere in the corner. Don't cry somewhere in the corner, Tyrese.
And it was just discouraging more than even like Tyrese and Vanya. Who cares? Just to see how many people jumped in on their side. And it was just like hundreds of thousands of comments. And you're just like, damn, like the progress. And
but
even though I know
the sad
it,
part about it is most of them are people though.
Yeah.
Most of them are
absolutely. It was I was going back and forth with this black woman for an hour.
But that's the thing though. Like I don't get into it with people who are fans of individuals because your loyalty to that person is blinded. Like there is no reason behind it outside of, you probably lost your virginity to the song that they sang, and that's something, and they forever have a memory in your brain, and so you forever gonna fuck with them.
Yeah,
that's true. It. It ain't logical at all whatsoever. So I don't get into it, fans. Anyone, because I'm a comic book nerd, anyone who is a comic book nerd will know that this is also not the first time that there have been queer things also in comic books too.
Period.
The only reason why it is getting such a huge headline is that it's Superman's son.
Exactly.
But there are tons of other superheroes who are also part of the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yep.
Like we talk about, for instance, like Captain Marvel. There are rumors we talk about, there have been stories when she was also queer and a lesbian in some of her stories as well too. There have been times where in certain comic books, there were times where even Batman had like queer dreams and like had like, been under some things where he had experienced.
But I thought you said he bent somebody over.
He
bent Robin over.
But I'm just saying, like anyone who knows comic books knows that there are tons of queer people in comic books. This ain't new. It's been like that forever. I'm talking about like even queer people back in the 70s and the 80s and fucking comic books.
And let's be all the way, this is no tea, no shade to people that love comics, but let's be all the way real. Comic book medium isn't like the most like hyped out medium out there. So your kid probably ain't gonna read this shit no way. So you just out here mad typing all this crazy shit for nothing because your kid is not even gonna know this comic book existed.
But it also sounds like that's one of those comic books that are actually something that someone else made. Like, and that's something that people don't understand. Like, there are DC official comic books that follow the DC storyline, and those that exist of Marvel that, follow those. And then there are people out there who are very good comics and drawers and storytellers that make their own that people love to read because they find the representation, but those don't fit into necessarily DC and Marvel. So you could be just picking up on something that someone else made that live in fucking Nebraska that is a gay man legit in the middle of nowhere, and he made that because that's what he needed to express and get out for himself. And now here you are talking about it, and I'm sure he's happy. Good for you.
Hell yeah.
The other positive thing out this is that it is sparking dialogue just like this.
Yep.
It's like for all the malicious intent that was spewed into this, little rant or whatever, him and Lil Boosie, they can continue to spout off on all things homosexual because clearly they are bothered. The beautiful thing about it is that it continues to spark and ignite meaningful conversations that result in meaningful change and advocacy for the protection of these stories and representation of gay individuals in every aspect of life. So kudos to you for continuing the dialogue and helping to advance, the LGBTQIA agenda. But
come on, gay agenda.
But but you can go cry in the corner still.
I got my pamphlet. Where's yours?
Oh, right.
Okay.
Page 38, right there.
And that was the other thing that shocked me too, just kind of reading some of the comments, that a lot of folks think right now, and even with a lot of the Chappelle stuff, that there's some gay agenda. And if that's the case, okay, cool. Let me get my pamphlet. Let me sign up, because we need to be in the forefront then. Shit, like, we've been through too much. But it's just interesting that that's their rhetoric right now, is that, if you can't say shit about the LGBTQIA plus community and da-da-da. Oh, your feelings that hurt that we finally getting... we can marry now, that we can finally go to work and not without the fear of being fired, that our trans brothers and sisters could at least walk down the street without getting harassed and killed. That's what you're
Let's
about.
talk about Dave Chappelle and this special, because you know what, let me tell you, I have been not even just Dave Chappelle, but even the Raiders coach that has resigned as well. Yeah, let me tell you, I've been going at it. I've been going at it with people, because of the fact is, people don't care unless shit ain't being said about them. And I hate that fucking notion. I hate the fact that, they're not talking shit about me, so that's a joke. No, that's not how it fucking goes. Disrespect is disrespect, period. Whether it's indirectly to you or not, whether it's in an email, a text message, on a Netflix special, or whatever the case is. If you talk out the side of your neck, you deserve to get your ass whooped, period.
Can I ask a question relative to that?
Yeah.
You're about to go there. Uh-oh.
Wait, is this a collective question or just to Jarrell?
Good.
Where does one draw the line between comedy, right, and disrespect?
Well, first of
and
all,
the reason
trauma is the number one thing.
Let me finish, because there's a difference, in my opinion, of intent. And I'm just curious, because part of comedy is to be disparaging.
Yeah.
Part of comedy. If you look at the history of jesters, they were talking shit about the monarchy. They were talking shit about peasants. They were talking shit about the nobles.
Right.
The history of comedy is rooted in disrespect,
and it's rooted in trauma, quite frankly.
But I'm just asking the question, where do you draw the line?
So I draw the line at the fact that this is 2021. So when we want to talk about history, don't mean that old ways don't create new paths. So that's great that back in the day, and that's where it started from, don't mean that needs to be the standards today. We have to get to a point where the evolving and doing better matters more than tradition. If tradition is rooted in trauma, rooted in disrespect and negativity and things that are triggering and harmful to individuals, that matters more than trying to be fucking funny. I don't care about your intent in trying to be funny. At the end of the day, if you are being disrespectful to someone, your intent means nothing. Because if your intent is to make someone have a positive reaction, then why would you start or say something that's negative to an individual? That's dumb. It makes no sense to be harmful to someone and expect for them to laugh.
So we are at a place. Okay,
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, we are at a place where how technology is today and how we are able to connect with people and how we are able to stand up for ourselves is a lot different than old ways. And we need to understand that that makes a difference. Sorry, my mother is calling me. My nephew called, and
So-
my nephew called me too. So
Oh
it's
yeah, you
just
might
kinda
want to
weird.
answer.
Oh, you
Yeah.
might, yeah. There's
Yeah,
something going
so
on.
take that.
Yeah.
So my
I'm gonna go on mute.
follow on, that's all right.
Yeah.
My follow on to that, just really quickly, is that, or at least my rebuttal to that particular statement is that what I don't see is that same energy. So if we're drawing the line at it's, just using Jarrell's words, we're drawing the line at it's 2021 and disrespect is disrespect. But you have the same person that we're lambasting for, for talking about trans individuals, but within the same comedy special, he did said everything that he could about Black people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we having that same energy? That's what I want to know, because it seems to me the point of the and then I do want to. I'm not saying that just to like say that and then I'm not giving you an opportunity, Rebecca, because I want to hear what you have to say. But to me, I don't see the same energy from our community for all communities. I don't see that. So when we get all in our uproar and our panties in a bunch over women and trans individuals, and I'm not saying that we should not.
Right.
Let's be clear. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. What I am saying is we need, if that's the line that we collectively are drawing, then we need to have that same energy all the way across the board.
We can't pick and choose the energy.
But I think that's the thing, though. But we are, though. I mean, like, you see so many white comedians getting dragged for being sexist and all these other things. This is not nothing that's just special to Dave Chappelle. Like, comedians and the comedic word, whatever the fucking word is, right now is being under under a magnifying glass for that reason, that line. And it's being drawn, and the fact that people's like real life trauma and history and triggers matter more than a fucking joke. They matter more.
What I hear you saying is, unless you're part of the community, you can't talk about any other community. That's what I hear you saying.
No, that's
not
what I'm saying.
And the reason
that's
I
not
take
what I'm
that,
saying at all.
Well, let me
because
just tell
you don't have to be a part of it.
I
I don't have to be a woman to understand women's rights. I don't have to be an Asian person to understand something that people who are specific, like Asian Americans go through. It's sympathy alone. That's
not what I said.
Empathy.
What I'm saying is, what I'm hearing from you, that is, it's okay if I'm Black, then I can talk about Black people.
That's not what I said.
So where's the line?
I just literally said the line is people's triggers. If the joke that you're saying is triggering to people, that is the line. I didn't say you have to be a part of any community. I said that the joke that you are landing or trying to land affects people negatively. That alone. You don't have to be a part of a community to make a joke or to understand. That is not what I'm saying at all whatsoever.
I would love to hear what you guys think.
And I was just thinking, let's get Z in here real quick.
Oh, so I think that there are two aspects of comedy, and I have tons of friends that are comedians, and so we have these types of discussions all the time, and they're very upset in regards to the fact that they're being robbed from their ability to be able to do comedy because of PC police and all that kind of stuff. So I hear it all the time. But there's an angle of comedy that's the self-deprecating aspect of it. And I think that's the part that you were kind of getting to, Dawon, where it's, Black folks talking about Black folks and all Black folks can laugh and everything. But if we think about it, let's remember why Dave Chappelle stopped his comedy and walked away from Netflix and all that kind of stuff. It was because he was doing all these Black jokes and the white folks were laughing too goddamn loud. Mm-hmm. And he was like, wait a minute, that's not what I was trying to do.
Right.
And he felt a certain kind of way because he kind of felt as though he was perhaps perpetuating the stereotypes, even though he was doing a lot of this self-deprecating comedy as it relates to Black folks and stuff. So we need to think back to, why Dave Chappelle left in the first place, right? But, I think it is different when people from a culture make fun of themselves and make fun of their culture, because I think that people kind of have the ability to do that, and it's a different type of situation if you're not from that group. However, I do hear what Jarrell's saying in regards to the harm aspect and element, right? Because, you don't see people doing rape jokes, right?
Okay.
Or if they do rape jokes, they're really going to be dragged across the board by everybody, by men and by women.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because there are certain lines that are drawn in the sand in regards to some of these things. Now, the interesting thing in regards to Dave Chappelle's most recent special, I haven't heard it, but I was listening to this podcast about it, and part of it was that there was a trans woman that had opened for him on many of these shows. It's a really good friend of his. That's a trans comedian, and she didn't feel as though his jokes were offensive or anything like that. She kind of co-signed and everything like that. Now, what I think in regards to some of those things is that if somebody in a position of power and influence that's giving you, that's allowing for you to ride their coattails, sometimes you have you're kind of biased in regards to looking at things, right?
Right.
Like, hey, this is my money train, so I'm not going to tell him that I'm offended by these jokes, even though everybody else that's in the trans community is going to be offended by these jokes. So it's kind of interesting in regards to that. I'll make sure I send the link over to you if I can find it again.
Mm-hmm.
But she ended up committing suicide because I think that she was getting dragged by members of the LGBT community. Like, why are you signing on and co-signing to all this Dave Chappelle stuff when he's dragging the community? So, I mean, I haven't listened to it, so I don't know exactly what it is that he said. I remember hearing the things that he said before as it regards to it. I know what a TERF is, and I know that the lady that wrote the Harry Potter stuff is a TERF and things of that nature. Yeah, J.K. Rowling, and to happily be and align yourself with her, it doesn't put you in good standing in my eyes, especially with somebody that's written about LGBT history and knows the trauma that's happened, and had to stop writing my book for 3 weeks because it was just overwhelming reading about all these trans women of color that have been murdered in this country that nobody knew about, nobody cared about, nobody was advocating for. And these are women whose stories are just buried and nobody cares, right? And so he doesn't know that trauma. And that's the sad part about it, that he can just be flippant about it, and there's corporations that are going to say, I'm just going to make my money on him, and who cares about the rest? But I don't know. I'd love to hear what the rest of y'all have to say about that.
Like I struggle with this one because, like, at the end of the day, if you just know how I am. Like, if someone's telling me that, like, they're hurt by something, I'm gonna believe them. Like, I don't care what it is. I'm gonna hear that through. Hard thing for me with this Chappelle special is, I guarantee a lot of people haven't watched it, and rightfully so, rightfully not. It doesn't matter. That's your decision. And I think for this particular special, we kind of talked about last week. Yes, it sucks that he had to almost tokenize his trans friend. So that part, and we kind of hinted at it a little bit. We're like, damn, But I think he utilized that just to show that it wasn't about the trans community. It was about white people of privilege. And somehow that has gotten lost in the narrative. And so it's like,
yes, but why?
But hold on,
that has to be the story to tell.
But no, hold on. Well, if you see, did you like?
I did see it. I'm just saying.
Okay, but hold on. Then let me finish then real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So for me, it just, that's the part of it that I'm just like, ugh. Out of all his specials that he was trying to tie together is white people. It doesn't matter if you're in the gay community, straight community, whatever community you're part of. It comes back to people of color when it's a privilege for them. And so that's what he was trying to get across. Clearly it didn't work. So, and I mean, you got to do your job better. You're a comedian.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. But that's the part that I just hope, if it ever clears up, it might not, and rightfully so it is, because if the trans community is hurt and upset by it, then you got to look at it, like, despite your intent and things like that, it hurt the community. So you got to find a way to rectify that. But I hope that white people of privilege realize that this is what he was talking about and trying to talk about, because he was saying, even if you're in the gay community, you can't just turn, as a white person, just can't turn your privilege on other people, exactly, when it suits you. That's what he was trying to get across.
But you know what's funny about that is there are way more white people for this So it really makes me feel like his point is lost.
Exactly. So you just got to do better at your job. It didn't
land. And
so like that's part of comedy too, unfortunately. Like, and it's just like,
and I agree.
And I was just saying, like, we get so upset at comedians, but we don't hold the same thing when somebody drop a stupid ass album. It's art. And that's the part.
Oh, no, we do on this podcast.
No, we do. We do.
Well, we do is a different look.
We're aunties.
Exactly. But so that
vanguards of the culture.
And I think that just kind of goes back to some of Dawon's statements. Just like we pick and choose when we want to get upset about stuff, when we should be upset about a whole lot more. And that's just humanity, though, unfortunately, too.
Yeah.
So I agree. We should probably be upset if the trans community is upset. Then hey, it didn't work. Then you got to do better at your job.
So
however, more than one thing can be true.
Exactly.
More than one thing can be true.
But how can you? And this is just on a question. How can you say, well, I support the trans people, like the trans community being upset about this, but at the same time be like, but why are we picking and choosing about what comedians say? That's a double standard.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying.
But the question was where's the line? The question is
that
where
was
the line.
That was Dawon's.
That was my question.
That was Dawon's question.
Your question was
my question.
Yeah, but I'm
where do you draw the line?
But how at the same time the line is if you stand for the trans community, you know your answer.
Right. Now we know the line. But here's the thing: when I was watching that special, personally, I don't think the joke was about the trans community. Is my point. The joke was white people of privilege turning on that privilege. However, since not everyone got that message and that joke,
the vehicle to get there
exactly didn't land. So hold on. So since it didn't land, he needs to find a better way to make it land because not everyone got it. And
right. So here's the thing.
What I'm just saying.
And that's the thing. I watched the special. I understood, but I also understood, and I felt I understood being part of a marginalized community. Absolutely. But if your target audience is white people, don't make it come from something that only people of marginalized communities understand. If you are trying to teach white people, then you need to speak.
But I think the joke was it was a white person that started the narrative of the trans community, is what he was saying. He was like, it was a white person that said that Dave Chappelle doesn't like the trans community. So he was trying to say, oh my God, that's not true. It's a white person's flipping this privilege on me. So part of it is just like, okay, if that's the narrative for him, if that's what happened, how else do you, as a comedian, hold on, let me just
that's a statement out of joke. That needs to be a statement out of joke.
I heard you. I get it, boo. I get it. I understand it. And it goes back to Dawon saying more than one thing could be true in this situation. And I get it. You're more black and white than a lot of folks, but it doesn't mean that more than one of the things can be true at the same time as well. And again, I'm just going to say this so you hear it and everybody hears it.
I ain't hear nothing.
That's okay. You don't need to.
That's
okay. You don't have to.
Yeah.
This
is for all y'all.
Nope, it's for you too. Communication goes exactly. Communication.
I stand where I stand.
And me too, boo. That's why I'm saying it again. If your joke didn't land, if everyone's this upset, you got to do better at your job. So that's the point I want to. That's I hear you. You heard me then, girl. You said you didn't hear me.
So why you saying? But that's the same thing I've been saying.
I said it 5 times, girl. You didn't hear it. You just wanted to fight the whole time.
What
no, I did. But you're still speaking up for Dave Chappelle.
An element of grace.
No, but you're still talking about like how.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Run that back.
You run it back.
I'm gonna say.
I'm gonna edit it. I'm gonna hear it 2 more times.
I know.
Receipts, honey. Yeah. But anyway, instead of the.
What I do love.
He's like, what the hell did I get myself into?
Oh, I love it.
We ain't been like this in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
He is a lawyer, so he knows.
You know it.
You can have constructive conflict in a way that doesn't diminish the relationship. So that's fine.
True.
But what I was going to say was what I love about these kinds of things, going back to what we said about Tyrese. Is again, when there are these kind of inflammatory things happening, what the benefit obviously there are, very strong perspectives,
Right.
and sometimes it can make it difficult for us to hear one another in the moment, whatever. But the benefit is that we have this opportunity to have this kind of discussion, because
Absolutely.
I think this kind of discourse is very healthy, and it's important for us to have as part of our community. As I think about Minority Report and what we represent, and the fact that representation matters, having staunch advocacy for equitable representation, equitable treatment of other people, and also the ability for people to be able to express themselves artistically, creatively, etc. How do we find that common ground is where the beautiful part of the conversation lands. So I'm glad we had this discussion. Clearly not going to agree on the total, align on the same perspective, but it's helpful to just get it out, because I think people can see that there are different sides to the same coin, and
even within the same communities.
Yeah, and I will say to Kerel's point too as well, though, like there are a lot of people who are talking about it that did not watch the special, and I do highly encourage people to watch the special first before you open your mouth.
That part.
Like
that
part.
But is watching the special given Netflix and Dave Chappelle
and that's the one thing that I hate about that too. Like I honestly, like I should be able to say I stand with my trans brother and sisters and non-binary as well, and not have to watch something to support them.
I think you can just say it like that, but a lot of folks aren't saying it like that.
but again, I feel like, but how can you also ask the question if you say you stand with them, they as well? How can you also ask the question, where is the line? Because the line only benefits Dave Chappelle. The line does not benefit those that were hurt.
Here's my perspective. Oh, go ahead.
Let's see.
The only thing I was going to say is that there's not going to be a line where nobody's going to be offended.
Yeah.
And we need to understand and accept that. There's always going to be somebody that's going to be offended regardless.
You're right.
Regardless.
Mm-hmm.
You can say hello.
Why you say hello that way? I don't like Adele. I don't like Adele no way.
Black man says hello to a white woman. What happens to him?
Right. Ooh,
so,
right.
It's like, I like Lionel better than Adele. Fuck that hello song.
The thing about this whole situation that just boils my britches is the fact that there are a lot of people who are, so like, I'm going to take a pause for a second. Jarrell, I know your heart and I know your passions and I know where you spend your time. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that are bandwagoning this dialogue like this. Mm-hmm. Just for the clout, just for the conversation, just because they ain't got shit else going on in their life, and they don't give two damns about the trans community. So what thing that pisses me off about this whole thing is, like, if you are gonna, again, this is where I go back to like that notion of like, where do you like picking and choosing? Like, there are a whole bunch of things that you can be doing other than like getting into Twitter fights about Dave Chappelle to support the trans community. How about you donate? How do you have any trans friends? Are you part of any support groups, any advocacy groups for the trans community? Are you contributing to anything other than the discourse? Because if you're not, bitch, you can shut the fuck up and sit down. Have several seats. I
feel some kind of way because you know, Auntie Henny. Part of the reason why I love to be loud is to be heard, and so people understand where I come from and understand what they're dealing with. So I understand the discourse, because sometimes you have to be loud and sometimes you have to speak up. And sometimes money isn't the only thing that talks. Sometimes you have to be the physical representation to make things happen. But
I think you're saying the same thing. You both are saying the same thing.
We're saying the exact same thing. Talking about the people for clout.
But I was going to say that. But the people who are not truly doing the work and not paying attention, not watching
Twitter warriors.
Yes, exactly. That's performance shit. That reminds me of Seattle.
And that's why for me, it's so frustrating, because you have a whole bunch of Twitter warriors out there who don't give a damn, that are just fueling the fame for their own clout. That's what I'm
part.
talking about.
But I also feel like that goes both ways,
I
though,
don't
because
wanna
I know a lot of people who jumped in for Dave Chappelle stand they love Dave Chappelle and they love him from way back when, from Comedy Central
It goes
days,
both
but they
ways.
didn't watch
Yep.
it. So it definitely
goes-
And it
definitely goes
And it goes back to
ways.
something you said earlier, Jarrell. They're fans of them, so you can't get into these fights with people that are already
Yes.
loyal.
I did say that, didn't I?
See?
You're right.
I be listening.
Okay.
See, look,
All right, we can move on to the next
Full
topic.
circle.
Good.
Did we just come full
That's
circle?
wasted
Right.
energy.
Exactly.
You and me, us never part.
Let me tell you.
What's up, C? What's up, Z?
When Fox News starts talking about quoting Dave Chappelle and how Dave Chappelle's put up on a pedestal, you know something's wrong.
Exactly.
You know something's wrong.
Exactly.
You know something's wrong.
And that's why I struggled all week,
because
because I was like, the folks that were speaking up, I'm like, I know you're not part of this community and you don't give a damn about this community. So
You
why
don't
you in the
care. No.
uproar?
Fan in the fame.
I mean, it's kind of like Fox when they talk about using Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets.
All of
as
it.
you know,
Ted Cruz too.
I can't.
He said, Kylie.
Okay, so,
Kylie, I'm done.
community earlier before we started recording, we were talking about topics we're going to talk about, and Dawon said Kylie Irving.
I'm like, I'm
Kerel
done.
and I go, wait, did you say Kylie? Kylie Irving?
Done. You ain't got to say shit else. That's the that explains everything right there.
All of it.
I mean, it does something that, like, the whole world's against you for sticking to your guns. Stick to your guns. But here's what you like, and I think we said a few episodes ago: if you don't own the business, there's only so much at a point that you can do. Stick to your guns, but don't get mad when you don't get paid. That, like, you know, and all these other facts. So if you want to stick to your guns and find other revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, like, to me, I see this as just like being like the rest of us niggas. We all got regular day ass jobs, and guess what? We can only say so much. And
There's
do
only so much we could do.
Welcome to the club, my brother.
There you go. Even though you're 160 million.
Oh, okay, look, okay. Like,
He can
we
rest
got
on those
different
laurels.
problems, okay?
Yeah, he gonna be
Different
cool.
I'm waiting for tomorrow to be payday, okay? And
That
he's
part.
I'm flexed. You good? Shut up. Shut up.
I know, that's right. But okay, so we need to get out here. But before we get out here, Z, thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Baby.
This was so
Tout
much fun.
your book again. Tell them where they can find it. So they get out there and get it for all these Christmas gifts.
Absolutely. So it's Our Gay History in 50 states. It's available at all your local retailers. However, if you purchase it at our website, gay50states.com, so gay50states.com, you'll be able to identify an LGBT nonprofit that's going to be able to get 10% of the book's proceeds. So support a brother, support people that are doing stuff for the community, support the community by buying it from folks that are going to give back to the community and not give a bunch of money to somebody that's going to send people up into space. That's not the best way to do it. Support your small business.
Because he ain't sending us.
Right.
And it goes back to what Dawon just said. That's how you support the community. You don't give it to the Netflixes, the Amazons world. That's how you support it and show that you care about the community. Because if not, then you're just doing performative shit and it don't matter what the fuck you're saying. And on that note, wash your hands, wash your legs, wash your ass. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.